Good morning, dear children. Last class we discussed about male reproductive system, isn't it? Hope you all know the parts associated with the male reproductive system and their functions and all, isn't it? Now today we are going to study about another important structure, that is female reproductive system. And you know, you are well familiar with the structures associated with male. And you know that in the case of male, the structures are same, especially the main testes, it is seen outside the body. But in the case of female, the structures, they are seen inside the body in the lower abdominal cavity. You know what is lower abdominal cavity? Just below the stomach. That area is the lower abdominal cavity. So in the case of female, these structures are seen inside the lower abdominal cavity. So now we can move on to the important structures associated with what? Female reproductive system. First we can say about the ovary. First one, it is the ovary. How many ovaries are there? 1, 2, isn't it? A pair of ovaries are there. Next one, it is the fallopian tube. It is the fallopian tube. Third one, it is the uterus. And next one, it is the cervix. And last one, it is the vagina. These are the main 5 important parts associated with female reproductive system. They are ovary, fallopian tube. Hope you can see it very clearly, fallopian tube. Then uterus, then the cervix, and next is the vagina. So you can see 2 ovaries are there. That means a pair of ovaries are seen in the female like the male. Male also have what? 2 testes. Likewise, female also have got what? Females also have a pair of ovaries. And difference is that testes are seen outside the body, but the ovaries are seen inside the body of the female. So now we can see a pair of ovaries are there. Then you can see the fallopian tube. Now from both ovaries you can see the fallopian tube. Then they both ends in a structure. There is the uterus, and uterus, you know, it opens. Small opening is known as the cervix, and this is the vagina. Clear? These are the main 5 structures associated with female reproductive system. Then we can move on to the function. And can you just guess what are the functions of ovary? Ovary main 2 functions are there. Ovary, it secretes the hormones, and 2 hormones are secreted. They are the estrogen and progesterone. Ovary produces 2 main substances. First one, as we all know, eggs. And it also produces 2 female hormones or female sex hormones known as estrogen and progesterone. So, ovary, 2 ovaries are there. They releases the eggs, or they produces the eggs, and they produces 2 female hormones, sex hormones, that bring out the secondary sexual characters in the female. The characters that make a female or differentiate a female from a male, that is the secondary sexual characters. It is because of the hormones estrogen and progesterone, these characters are there in the female. So the ovaries, 2 main, it can be asked for the examination. 2 main functions are there for the ovary. First one, it releases the eggs. Second one, it releases 2 female hormones, sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Then when a girl child is born, that is very important, her ovaries consist of nearly 1000 immature eggs. Immature. What do you mean by immature? Not mature enough. So when a girl child is born, her ovaries consist of nearly 1000 immature eggs. As the girl attains maturity, or at the time of puberty onwards, every month 1 egg matures. Every month how many egg matures? Only 1 egg. 1 from, not together, 1 month from the right ovary, next month from the left ovary. Likewise, you don't want to think that from 2 ovaries the eggs are released. 1 month only 1 ovary releases the egg. It takes place alternatively. 1 month from the right ovary, second month from the left ovary. Clear? So when a girl child is born, her ovaries consist of nearly 1000 immature eggs. After attaining puberty or maturity, 1 egg matures at a time, and it is getting released. After attaining maturity, you know the eggs are there in the ovary. Numerous eggs are there in the ovaries. Then you know what happens in both ovaries. Okay, in both ovaries you can see numerous immature eggs. So every month after attaining maturity or puberty, one egg gets released. Only one egg gets released, and that process is known as what? Ovulation. Very, very important 1 mark question. What is ovulation? The releasing of, if you want you can note it down, the releasing of mature eggs by the ovary to the fallopian tube. That process is known as what? Ovulation. Releasing of mature ova. You know why it is known as ovulation? Because ova, otherwise egg, both are same. Egg or otherwise not ova. So after attaining maturity, every month ovary releases mature egg. That process is known as what? Ovulation. Releasing of the mature egg or ova by the ovary, and they are released into the fallopian tube. That process is known as ovulation. It takes place in every 28 days. Every month it takes place. Every month ovulation takes place. Clear about ovulation? So now the egg is getting released. Now the mature egg is getting released into the fallopian tube. So the entrance, you know this structure, funnel shaped structure, they are known as fimbriae. Just understand the part. The funnel shaped structure, see near the ovary, that is known as the fimbriae. It's a part of fallopian tube. So this fimbriae, yeah, since egg is released into the fallopian tube, so this egg slowly moves, very, very slowly moves, and it reaches the uterus. When I say this, you may have doubt that last class I told you, egg is non-motile. Then still, how it moves or how it passes through the fallopian tube? It is because of the hairs present in the fallopian tube. You know, hair-like structures are there in the fallopian tube. You know, hair-like structures are there. And by the wavy movement of these hair-like structures, this wavy movement pushes the egg towards the uterus. Egg doesn't move alone because it is non-motile. Something should be there to push the egg, then only egg moves. You know, sometimes if you don't want to move from a place, you may simply stand there. And somebody need to push you, that time you go slow only. But if you wish to move, definitely you can go in your own pace or you can go fast. Similarly, here also egg is non-motile. It cannot move. Why? Then how does it move? It is because of the, hair-like structures known as cilia are there in that, and with the help of the wavy movement of these hair-like structures, the egg slowly moves and passes through the fallopian tube and reaches the uterus. Both cases same thing only, but 1 month from one side only it occurs. 1 month from one side only it occurs. So this egg, it slowly passes through the fallopian tube and it reaches the uterus. Clear? Now what is this egg? Now in the egg, it is in the uterus. Up to here, is it clear? Yes. Ovary releases the egg every month, mature egg, and the egg, it moves towards the uterus through the fallopian tube. It is because of the hair-like structures present in the fallopian tube. Now the egg is there in the uterus. So let it be there. Before that, I would like to tell you one thing. When this ovary releases the egg, immediately one thing happens in the uterus. Every month it happens. When the egg is released, uterus always accepts or expects a baby. It always prepares itself to really receive a baby. Whenever the ovary is or egg is released, as I told you, hormones are released. These hormones immediately remind the uterus that one guest is coming. If you know the arrival of the guest, definitely you may prepare different types of dishes and you may clean your room, etc., etc. Depends. You will be ready, or we all will be ready to receive the guest. So special preparations are there for receiving the guest. Similarly, the uterus also, every month it happens, as it gets the information that egg is released, definitely its uterus starts preparing. You know, have you seen the endometrium? It's inner lining of the uterus. It is known as endometrium. Inner lining of the uterus, it is known as the endometrium. So this endometrium thickens to receive the baby. It is richly supplied with blood vessels. Which part is richly supplied with blood vessels? The endometrium or the inner lining of the uterus gets richly supplied with the blood vessels because it expects a baby every month. Whenever egg is released, uterus thinks that baby will come. Do you think every month the baby will go to the uterus? Is it possible? No, rarely. Once in a year, or depending upon the number of children a pair or family is having, or a couple is having, it changes. Normally every month it doesn't take place at all. Every month uterus prepare to receive the embryo or receive the baby, but you know what happens? For that it prepares itself, this richly supplied with blood vessels, and it waits for the newly embryo. You know what happens? Nearly takes 8 to 10 days because egg is moving very slowly, because egg is getting pushed by the hairs. So with the 8 to 10 days, it takes 8 to 10 days for the egg to reach the uterus. When the egg reaches the uterus comes to know that this time also baby has not come. Every month it is same thing happens, but still it continues to do it. Every month it happens, uterus knows it, but still it continues to prepare for the coming embryo. Once the egg reaches here, uterus realizes that this time also no baby is there to come. So what happens, you know, all the blood vessels, it gets broken down, or it bursts or get broken down. Along with that, egg also burst. And all these blood vessels and the egg, it comes out through the cervix and goes out through the vagina. That is what is known as menstruation. 1 mark question for the exam. Define menstruation. It is nothing, it is the vaginal bleeding. Through the vagina, what happens? This is a canal for the birth canal also. Baby comes, in the case of normal delivery, baby comes out through the vagina. Normal delivery, I am not talking about the cesarean or ovulation. In the case of normal delivery, the baby comes out through the vagina. And same route only, the blood or the unwanted blood comes out through the body, comes out of the body of the female. See here, what is menstruation? You need to explain like this. When the egg reaches the uterus, every month when the egg is released, uterus prepares itself to receive the developing or receive the embryo. But when the egg reaches the uterus realizes that embryo has not yet come. So what happens? The inner lining of the uterus this endometrium, it is richly supplied with blood vessels. These blood vessels get burst, and what happens? Along with egg also, blood vessel gets broken down, and egg also, even though egg is a microscopic structure, egg also get burst, and what will happen? It comes out through the vagina, and that is known as menstruation. When a girl attains maturity, menstruation begins. That last class, when I told you about the speciality of the female after attaining maturity, I told you about menstruation. So this is menstruation. It is nothing. It is a breaking down of blood vessel along with the egg, and it comes out through the vagina in the form of vaginal bleeding, and that is known as what? Menstruation. Every month it happens in every 28 days, like the ovulation. Ovulation is followed by menstruation. After ovulation, menstruation takes place. Ovulation is always followed by what? Menstruation. Ovulation is the releasing of the egg. Menstruation is what? It is the bursting of the egg along with the blood vessels, and it comes out through the vaginal area. Clear? Hope it is clear about the structure and the function of the ovary. They releases the eggs and the female hormones known as estrogen and progesterone, and the fallopian tube is a pathway for the passage of the egg as well as the zygote that we will discuss now. Next is the uterus. This is the opening cervix, and finally the vagina. So now you know that every month this process takes place because the egg, what will happen to the egg? egg doesn't get fertilized, or no sperms are there to fertilize the egg, then what will happen? It will slowly move towards the fallopian tube. It takes nearly 8 to 10 days. So after ovulation, after 8 to 10 days after ovulation only, the menstruation begins. Because it needs time to burst and to break down the blood vessels, and it comes out through the vagina in the form of bleeding, that is menstruation. Now we can move on to how fertilization takes place and what's the role of uterus in fertilization, what's the role of fallopian tube in fertilization. Shall we move on to that? You know, the ovary, as I told you, every month it releases the egg. Every month it releases the mature egg. So the egg, it passes through, and this area, it is known as the ampulla. This area is known as the ampulla, right? So very slowly, when the egg is released, very slowly it reaches the ampulla region. This is the beginning of the fallopian tube. It is the ampulla region. You know what happens? As I told you, the penis is the male reproductive structure, or the structure that helps in sexual contact with the female. Penis is the structure. So this penis, how you know how this intercourse or the copulation, and another term of it is the copulation. You know what happens? This penis gets inserted into the vaginal area of the female. Penis gets inserted into the vaginal area of the female, and the penis releases the semen. You know, semen consists of what all things? Who can say? Yes, sperm as well as the fluid from the 3 glands: prostate gland, seminal vesicle, and the corpus gland. So this penis, it releases the sperms into the vagina. As I told you, millions of sperms are there. When it gets ejaculated, that process is a releasing of semen is known as ejaculation, the releasing of semen. And that semen consists of millions and millions of sperms. And all these sperms, as I told you, they are what? They are, yes, they all have head and a tail, and they all run very fast. All these sperms passes through the cervix. See, this is a pathway, and you know, it reaches the fallopian tube. After every ejaculation, after every releasing of the sperm, you know what will happen? All the sperms, not only 1 or 2, these millions and millions of sperms, they run. You know, as they are taking part in a marathon race. All the sperms, they run very fast, and they move very fast as they are motile, and to the cervix and passes through the uterus, and through the uterus it reaches the fallopian tube. Meanwhile, as I told you, the egg is released, the egg slowly moves towards, and when it reaches here, if the sperm reaches here, you know what will happen? You know, the egg reaches here, and meanwhile the sperm also reaches here, and they both fuse together. Likewise, this is the egg. Egg is there in the fallopian tube, and you know that the sperm, numerous sperms, not only one, numerous sperms reaches the egg. But only one sperm can gain entry. Even though these numerous sperms, you know, first come, first serve. Hope you have heard that proverb, first come, first serve. So the sperm that comes first, it gets injected into the female body. Sperm that comes first, getting injected into the egg, and takes place in the fallopian tube. So what does the fertilization takes place? It doesn't take place in the uterus. Fertilization takes place in the fallopian tube. That's very, very important 1 mark question. Fertilization takes, what is fertilization? Fusion of the egg and the sperm, that is fertilization. For fusion of the egg and the sperm to form the zygote, and that process is known as what? Fertilization. And where does the fertilization takes place? It takes place in the fallopian tube. You should write what? Fallopian tube. And if you write ampulla, you will not get full mark, because you should write the fallopian tube, and then you can specify it takes place in the ampulla region of the fallopian tube. If you don't write ampulla also, you may get the mark, but if you write ampulla only, sometimes you may lose the mark, because you should mention fallopian tube fertilization takes place in which part? Fallopian tube. That is the fusion of the egg and the sperm. It takes place in the fallopian tube. And afterwards, know what is formed there? Yes, the zygote is formed. So the zygote is also non-motile. Zygote is also non-motile. Then what happens? By the pressure or by the wavy movement of the hair-like structures, the zygote slowly moves and zygote slowly moves and it reaches in the uterus. Slowly moves and it reaches the uterus. Slowly it moves. And meanwhile, while the zygote moves, it divides so many times. First one division, then again divides, continuously it divides. After fertilization, the product is known as the zygote. As it passes through the fallopian tube, it divides so many times and it is known as what? It is known as the embryo. When the zygote divides numerous times, what is formed? It is the embryo. When it reaches the uterus, we cannot call it as zygote again. It's an embryo. Clear? Zygote is the fusion of the male and the female. Sperm and ovum, they fuse together to form the zygote. But when the zygote divides, as it passes through the fallopian tube, zygote divides numerous times, and the zygote, when it reaches the uterus, we can call it as what? Embryo. Numerous, the group of cells are there, mass of cells are there. They are known as the embryo. And you know what will happen? This embryo stick to the wall of the uterus. This embryo, they stick to the, they are the embryo stick to the wall of the uterus and starts growing there. Embryo sticks to the wall of the uterus and they starts to grow there. Embryo stick to the wall of the uterus and they starts to grow there. And the sticking of the embryo into the wall of the uterus, and that is known as implantation. Another important term. Now you know ovulation, second term menstruation, then zygote, then embryo. Can you differentiate zygote and the embryo? Zygote is what? It is composed of single cell, very important thing. Sperm and ovum, they fuse together to form the zygote. Zygote is single cell. Then what about embryo? Is it a single cell? No. This zygote, as it reaches meanwhile as it reaches the uterus, it divides so many times, and what is formed? Embryo is formed. And this embryo, it sticks to the wall of the uterus. As you all know, then the uterus gets prepared itself to receive the developing embryo, so full of blood vessels and all. And another structure is there. You know the structure. The structure is seen in the wall of the uterus. It is known as the placenta. A structure, it's a group of cells. Placenta is a disc-shaped structure. It's a disc-shaped structure and it's richly supplied with villi, blood vessels to increase the surface area. The placenta is a structure seen attached to the inner wall of the uterus. There's a disc shape. Shape is what? Disc-shaped structure richly supplied with blood vessels. And you know that, and they have a connection with the embryo. They have a connection with the embryo, and that connection is known as what? Umbilical cord. That connection is known as what? Umbilical cord. You have that area till now. Yes. After the birth, the doctors get separated that cord. It's a long cord. Long after the birth of the baby, that connection will be cut, separated, and still we all have that area in the middle of the stomach. All of us have that area, that is the cut portion of the umbilical cord is still there in our stomach. If you haven't seen it, just look. So this placenta is a disc-shaped structure attached to the inner wall of the uterus, and the connection, it is for what? It is to provide the nutrients to the developing embryo. Here of course the zygote is having the food storage. Zygote is having the food storage because egg is having that. So as that time it had enough storage till it reaches the embryo, it has got food. Once it reaches the uterus, when it changes into embryo, food should be supplied. Then only the embryo can grow into a baby. Clear? For that, immediately a structure is formed inside the inner wall of the uterus. And what happened? That structure is known as the placenta. It is connected to the baby, or it is connected to the embryo by means of the umbilical cord. Another term, umbilical cord. Umbilical cord. And through this umbilical cord, the food materials, oxygen, etc. are transported to the embryo. Same manner, the waste materials carbon dioxide, etc. are released back into the mother's body through the same pathway only, umbilical cord. Otherwise, baby cannot take the food by itself. It needs the support of the mother. So, mother is giving the food for the baby. The mother cannot feed the baby as such. So, that duty is done by the placenta and the umbilical cord. Placenta is a disc-shaped structure. So, it can be asked for the examination. Placenta is a disc-shaped structure. It is full of villi, richly supplied with what? Blood vessel to increase the surface area. Then large quantity of exchange of materials can take place, because if the area is small, exchange also can take place first. Then what happens? Then this connection is made by a tube-like structure known as umbilical cord. Through this umbilical cord, the mother can give the food and the oxygen to the baby. Now we can't call the baby now, to the embryo, and from the embryo also, after consuming the food as well as oxygen, it also releases the waste, and that waste reaches back to the mother or the placenta through the same pathway, that is the umbilical cord. So both are different. Placenta is the disc-shaped structure attached to the wall of the uterus. Umbilical cord is the tube that connects the embryo and the mother. Please don't get confused. And you know what happened? When that time the embryo, it divides so many times, and gradually, within 2 to 3 months, it develops all the body parts. Within 2 to 3 months, the embryo develops all the body parts. Then we can call it as what? Fetus. 3 are different. Zygote, single cell. Zygote divides numerous times and it becomes what? Embryo. It's a multicellular thing. That time, no, we cannot differentiate what is heart, what is eyes, we can't. But after 2 to 3 months, this embryo, after receiving the food and all, it starts to divide, and what will happen, it develops all the body parts. Once all the body parts are developed, we can call it as what? Fetus. So 3 are different. Zygote, embryo and fetus. When we call it as a fetus, if all the body parts are there, then we can call it as what? Fetus. Clear? And this embryo starts growing in the womb. We can call uterus, another name is the womb, W-O-M-B. Womb of the mother. You can call this the uterus, or otherwise known as what? Womb. So this baby or the fetus grows in the womb of the mother or the uterus of the mother. And after approximately, and that period, baby or fetus remains in the womb of the mother for nearly 9 months. For nearly 9 months, and that period is known as gestation period. Another term, gestation period. What is gestation period? It's a time period by which the fetus remains in the womb or uterus of the mother. That time period is known as what? Gestation period. One more question. What is gestation period? It's a time period by which the fetus remains in the womb of the mother. That is known as what? Gestation period. So after 9 months, what happens? The baby should go out of the mother. It should be gone. Otherwise, what will happen? The baby will die. The baby should go. The baby, after attaining the full maturity, the baby should be released to which part of the female body? It is to the vagina. Vagina is known as the birth canal. Vagina is known as the birth canal. Why it is known as the birth canal? Because the baby comes out through the vagina in the case of normal delivery. In the case of normal delivery, the baby comes out through the vagina. It is because of that vagina is known as the birth canal. In case of cesarean, the doctors, they are just tearing and they are just taking the baby out of the mother's uterus. That is it. Normal case, no? Normal case. And which part of the baby should come first? Head should come first, not the leg. Head of the baby should come first. So till that time, the doctors will wait. If any problem is there, they will suggest towards surgery. Legs shouldn't come first. It can cause problem to the baby. So after taking out of the, the mother's body, the baby, the baby should cry. That is it. Baby should cry. You know why the baby cry? Because inside the uterus, the baby is living in an good atmospheric condition. It is living in a sac known as what? The baby lives in a sac known as what? Amniotic sac. You know, the baby, it lives in a small sac known as what? Amniotic sac. And the sac is full. You know that a small transparent sac is formed. Inside that sac only the baby. This is the amniotic sac. This sac. So the baby or the embryo develops inside that amniotic sac and it is full of fluid also. So the baby is always having, and you know that as it is in the cradle, likewise if whenever the mother moves and it feels that it is in the cradle, likewise always it always feels that movement, and till it comes out, no, it doesn't do anything by itself. Oxygen is getting through the umbilical cord, food is getting through the umbilical cord. Once the baby comes out through the vagina or after the birth, the baby learns or starts to breathe by itself. That time it starts to cry. That's it. Cry. If the baby doesn't cry, the doctors may say that some problem is there with the baby. It should cry. Then only the doctors may say that the baby is healthy. If any problem is there with the baby, it doesn't cry. Clear? Okay. So, the process of giving birth, it is known as another term, parturition. Parting. That is it. Parting from the mother. Parturition. What is parturition? It is the process of by which the baby comes out through the vagina or the common delivery. Example is don't like delivery. You should like parturition. The act of giving birth. It is known as what? Parturition. First one, what is implantation? The sticking of the embryo into the wall of the uterus. It is known as implant. Planting. You can just relate with that, planting, implantation. Then afterwards, the time period by which the embryo it remains in the womb or uterus of the mother, that is known as what? Gestation period. And last is what? After that period gets completed, the baby should go out of the mother's body, or the act of giving birth to the baby, it is known as what? Parturition. So you should be thorough with these three terms. You may be asked to differentiate implantation, parturition and the gestation period. So please don't get confusion. Implantation, planting of something. Gestation means what? The time period by which it remains there. And what is parturition? Parting. Just relate that, parting from the mother. That is known as what? Parturition. That is the act of giving birth is known as what? Parturition. So through the vagina only, vagina plays an important role in it. Through the vagina, baby comes out. Through the vagina, the sperms reaches the female body. Through the vagina, the menstrual bleeding also. So this vagina is very, very important structure. So you know what will happen? Yeah, when the baby becomes mature, it needs to come through this area, isn't it? Normally the uterus is not very big. As the baby enlarges in size, what will happen? The uterus also get enlarged. You can see when we look from outside, the stomach of the mother or the lady gets enlarged if the baby is there in it. So the stomach or the uterus get enlarged, and at the time of birth, it's a muscular structure only. It stretches and the baby should come out, and the cervix also, this is cervical area also should be open. Then only very easily the baby can come down, and the vagina also should open. The vagina is a small opening. It is not a big opening like this. It's a small opening. It should also be opened, or the doctors otherwise may just cut and make enlarges in size. Small cut should be made there to allow the baby to come out, and that process is known as what? Parturition. So here you know that through this vagina, sperms, it passes through the uterus and it reaches the fallopian tube, and the fertilization takes place in the fallopian tube. Afterwards, zygote is formed. As zygote slowly moves towards the uterus, meanwhile it divides so many times and it forms the embryo. The embryo sticks to the wall of the uterus, and that process is known as implantation. And immediately a structure known as placenta is formed. It is richly supplied with what? Blood vessels, and the placenta is connected to the mother through the tube known as umbilical cord, and the time period by which the baby remains in the uterus, it is known as the gestation period. And finally, what happens when the time gets completed? The baby should come out of the vagina, and that process is known as what? Parturition. Clear? Okay. Then you may have doubt that, as I told you, numerous sperms approaches the egg, numerous sperms, numerous sperms approaches the egg, and only one sperm can gain entry into the egg, only one sperm. Then what will happen to the next sperms? Then how will the sperms understand that they don't have any chance to enter? That has got an ability to do that. When one sperm enters into the body, the egg, it produces an outer covering. When other sperms, when they see this outer covering, they realizes that what will happen? They don't have, the door is closed. So they will remain there for some time and they will get water, their microscopic structure. Nearly 48 hours the sperm can remain. Nearly 2 to 3 days. The sperm can remain in the female body waiting for the egg. Afterwards, what will happen? It gets degenerated and it will go out of the female body because it is in the female body. So it goes out of the female body. Only one sperm can gain entry into the egg. When the entry gets completed, immediately it produces an outer covering to give a warning to other sperms that one sperm has already entered. So the sperms will remain there. I will you can just watch the video after this class. Then you will understand it better how it happens. Clear, children? Yes. So the sperms, and they will remain there for some time, and after some time they will get degenerated or they will get destroyed and it will go out through the female body. Yeah. Okay. So now some of you have doubt that how I told you only one egg matures at a time. Then sometimes you have heard that some are having twins. Twin babies are born. Sometimes 4 babies are born. Sometimes 5, 6, 7, up to 9 babies can be formed in one delivery. And first we can discuss about how the twins are formed. Twins are of two types. First one, it is the identical twins. Identical twins. Second one, it is the fraternal twins. Identical twins, as the term indicates, that both are same. Fraternal means what? Both twins are different. First we can discuss how these identical twins are formed. As I told you, when the zygote is formed, it divides so many times, isn't it? First zygote, zygote divides into two. Normally, it doesn't get separated. Normally, the same, no separation takes place. But in some cases, that these two get separated. These two get separated and they both move towards the uterus and they stick to the wall of the uterus and they live there. So such twins are known as what? Identical twins. They are, if the twins both boys or both girls. One boy and one girl never happens in identical cases. Here only one egg and one sperm. One egg and one sperm only. In such conditions, you will get only identical twins. Both are female or both are male and they both look alike also. Because here only from the one egg or one zygote divides only. In the case of fraternal twins, sometimes two eggs are released. Normally it doesn't happen. In sometimes one egg is released from one ovary, another egg is released from the second ovary. And numerous sperms are there, isn't it? There is no scarcity for sperms. So this one sperm fuses with the one egg, another sperm fuses with the another egg. Then of course two zygotes are formed. They two will come towards the the uterus and they stick and they start growing there. Such twins are known as what? Fraternal. There is no similarity. In the case of Siamese twins also you have heard, isn't it? When they split, sometimes they cannot get separated completely. This is the zygote. When the zygote divides into two, sometimes normal identical twins, they get separated like this. But in the case of Siamese twins, what will happen? Some part of it will get attached to each other. Maybe the head may get attached. Maybe the stomach. So likewise they will grow and they will move towards and they will remain here in the uterus and grow. They are known as Siamese twins. Because one of the body part maybe the legs, maybe the head, or maybe the stomach, maybe the heart. Any part can get attached. It depends where the separation doesn't take place. Clear? They are known as what? Siamese twins. And sometimes after treatment and all instead of one egg, numerous eggs are released at a time. numerous eggs are released at a time, then what will happen? As I told you, enough sperms are there. The sperms gets fused with all the eggs. And finally what will happen? Numerous babies are formed and they stick into the uterus and they start growing it. And they can be taken out of the female body. By normal delivery is not possible in such situation. Cesarean or the operation is possible. So this is about the female reproductive structure and the fertilization in the human body. Hope it is clear. Now you can watch a video, then you will understand it better, how the sperm approaches the egg and how the fusion takes place, and afterwards what happens. You can just view by yourself, then you will understand it better. So children, as I used to say every time, please be up to date, please be steady, don't waste your time. Clear? So learn to draw this as I told you class. This diagram is also very important. Please don't waste time. Learn to draw the diagram. This can be asked for the examination. So now children, you can watch the video. Until we meet in the next class, it's bye from me. Bye. Take care. Be safe at home. Bye children.
Let's see the different parts of the female reproductive system. Ovaries. There are a pair of ovaries in the female reproductive system that contain the premature egg cells. Oviducts. There are two oviducts which unite into an elastic bag-like structure known as uterus. Uterus. It is called the womb where the implantation and development of baby takes place. Cervix. The uterus opens into the vagina through the cervix. Vagina. It is the passage where sperms are deposited by the penis of male reproductive system during sexual intercourse. Now let's see the production of female gametes. When do girls start producing egg cells? When a girl is born, the ovaries already contain thousands of immature eggs. By reaching puberty, the eggs start maturing. One egg is produced every month by one of the ovaries. The egg released by the ovary is collected in the fallopian tubule. It is the place where the fertilization takes place by the fusion of sperm and egg cells. Then, how do the sperms reach fallopian tubule? The sperms get deposited in the vagina of the female reproductive system by the penis of the male reproductive system during sexual intercourse. The sperms travel towards fallopian tubule and finally reaches the egg cell and fertilizes it. The hormones secreted by the ovaries prepares the uterus to receive and nurture the growing embryo. The walls of the uterus becomes thick and richly supplied with blood to nourish the growing embryo. The fertilized egg, the zygote, gets implanted in the lining of the uterus and starts dividing. Placenta is a special tissue that helps the embryo to get nutrition from the mother's blood. It is embedded in the uterine wall and provides glucose and oxygen to the embryo. Placenta also transfers the waste generated by the embryo into the mother's blood. The development of the child inside the mother's body takes approximately 9 months. This period is called as gestation period. The child is born as a result of rhythmic contractions of the muscles in the uterus.